What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And it's just your average duo back at it again. No extra special effects, no extra special guests, just me and Chris Fedor, your two favorite hosts of the podcast, getting it cracking before the Eastern Conference Semifinals on Sunday. But we still don't know, to this point of the recording, what time the Cavs will be playing on Sunday. The Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors play tonight to try and decide if they're going to have a Game 7 or not. If the Rockets force a Game 7 against the Warriors, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Cavs on Sunday. If the Warriors win Game 6, then the game will begin at 8 p.m. Chris, I know that an 8 p.m. start is less than ideal for anybody involved, even the players, as we understand their sleep schedules and all these things. What do you think about how the NBA has put together, how they've decided which game and what time everything is going to be panned out? It's Friday, and we still don't know what time the Cavs are going to be playing. It feels a little silly to me.
Well, it does, but this is how it goes. You talk about big money involved. You talk about networks involved. You talk about markets involved. And obviously, you want certain teams in certain time slots. And you also want it to make the most possible sense for them based on the time zone that they're in, what time tip-off time is going to be, all that kind of stuff. All I'm hoping for is no 8 o'clock start on Sunday. Oh, my God. That means that the game won't end until just after 10:30, maybe get out of the locker room podium close to midnight, podcast, writing. I don't think I'd be writing. I don't think I'd be done writing until like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then it's go to bed when the sun is coming up, basically, and sleep until, I don't know, 10, maybe 11. It's just not ideal for me. And you know how I roll, Ethan. When it comes to scheduling stuff, when it comes to the possibility of where we're going to travel to and what team the Cavs could face in what situation, I'm focused on how does it affect me the most. Not how does it affect the Cavs. Not how does it affect the fan base. How does it affect me the most? And an 8 o'clock start on Sunday is less than ideal for me. That's just not the way that I want this series to start.
Win, lose, or draw, no 8 p.m. start for Chris Fedor. It doesn't matter. That's exactly how we're
There are going to be enough of those, Ethan. There are going to be enough 8:30 when you get into the Eastern Conference Finals, when you get into the NBA Finals, if the Cavs get to the NBA Finals. So I know that, but it doesn't need to be in the second round. Let's save that for the Eastern Conference Finals and the Finals, and then we'll adjust. And that's just the reality of the situation, because one of the teams that you're playing is from the Western Conference, so you've got to make it fair for them with the time zone and all that kind of stuff. I totally understand that. But in the second round against the Indiana Pacers, they're basically right next door. Come on, 6 o'clock. The other great thing about the 6 o'clock start, if it is a 6 o'clock start, there wouldn't be shoot around for the first game on Sunday. And that means a shorter day work-wise, once again, for me, for you, for all of the writers.
I think that's a great point. And Chris, I think it's just so funny how we talk about how the Cavs have had this plan of resting and trying to get themselves acclimated. I feel like I put myself through a Tom Thibodeau kind of season where I forced my body to be ready to work as long as 5 a.m., 6 a.m. some nights, just for moments like these, because 8 p.m. starts, man. No friend to a writer, especially when we have to do the podcast and all these different things. We love y'all. So happy we get to speak to you, and we're going to be live after the game to try and mitigate some of those things. But you're going to have to be up late with us, and I don't know how grouchy y'all are going to be up at midnight, 1 o'clock, depending on whenever we get back to podcast. But again, we will be recording live after each home game, maybe even after each game, depending on how late it goes in Indiana. But that's not what we were going to talk about today, even though we got 5 minutes into that about the game time. Today is another rendition of Hey Chris for the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. It's where Subtext subscribers get to send in questions that they desire to be answered, and we kindly oblige, beginning and creating a Cavs community that allows them to have their voice heard, be able to communicate directly to our phones, directly to you guys, and it's only $3.99 a month. And for the playoffs, it's a steal because the first 14 days are free. So you sign up on Sunday, well, you might just get 2-3 games worth of free content from us and still get to have your voice heard. And that'll prove to you why you should join up with subscribe and get on Subtext. But that's just my little spiel for you guys to get insider coverage directly to your phone. And now we're going to get into some of the questions from our subtexters that we received today. We talked a lot about how important the rotational players have been throughout the first round, Chris, but overall in this series. And this question coming from Rollin from Canton, Ohio says, which bench players after Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter do you believe will get the most minutes against the Pacers and why? Because from series to series, it can switch, and it feels like this series calls for something a little bit different than what it called for in the Miami Heat first round series.
I think the two that stand out to me, Ethan, are Dean Wade and Sam Merrill. I think it's more their kind of series than I think it's Isaac Okoro's series. I think this is about scoring. I think it's about the best pathway to 115, 120 points. And I just don't know that the kind of offensive limitations that Isaac Okoro still has based on his reputation and based on how opponents guard him. I just don't know that that's the best path for the Cavs, especially because that gives Tyrese Haliburton a place to hide, and that takes him off the hook as a defensive player. I think everybody understands that coming into this series, the Cavs are going to target Tyrese Haliburton because it's very similar to when it comes to the Pacers targeting Darius Garland. One, it wears them down. Two, they're seen as lesser defenders. And three, like of the guys that are in that starting group or that 5-man lineup, it's the easiest pathway on the offensive end. If you're the Cavs, you're not going to relentlessly attack Andrew Nembhard. He might be all defense. If you're the Pacers, you're not going to keep going at Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell and Max Strus when you have a better option available to you, which is go at Darius Garland over and over and over again. So I think even though Isaac, has a place defensively in this series, he's tough and he's physical, and at the point of attack, it can take Indiana out of its usual flow. I just think his offensive limitations give Tyrese Haliburton a break, and it gives him somewhere to hide. And I just don't know that that is conducive to the Cavs being the kind of offense that they're going to have to be in this series to keep up with Indiana. So to me, it feels more like a Sam Merrill series from the beginning of this thing. Now, look, all of these things are fluid, right? Even if Sam Merrill's not making shots, if he's not playing well on the defensive end of the floor, then Kenny Atkinson's going to have a short leash on him, and he's going to go to the next guy in line. And it's the same thing if DeAndre Hunter's not playing well. Like if he has a game similar to game 1 against Miami, he's not going to get 30 minutes. Just like in game 1 against Miami, he's probably going to get less than 20 because it's going to be about how are you producing? How are you fitting alongside the other lineups that we're using? How do you fit based on the personnel that the other team is using? All of those things are going to play into it, and it's going to be a fluid decision. And that's part of the beauty of having a deep team like this is if one guy's not getting the job done, you feel like you have enough trust to go to the next guy. And if he's not getting the job done, then you have enough trust to go to the next guy and the next guy. So at the very least, the Cavs have 10 or 11 playable guys in this particular series against Indiana. It's just at the outset, I think it's going to start more toward Dean Wade and more toward Sam Merrill. And I'll make another prediction. I think there are going to be points in this series, Ethan, where Dean Wade finishes games. I do. I think there is going to be a situation where the Cavs go with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, either DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus, Dean Wade, and Evan Mobley. just because stylistically, those guys, I think in certain lineups, those guys have a better opportunity to defend the 5-out lineup of the Indiana Pacers. And I'm not saying it's going to be every single game, and I'm not saying that it's going to be game one right from the outset here of this series. But I think there's going to be a moment in this series that calls for Dean Wade finishing games. And I think this is the kind of series because of his ability to guard Miles Turner, because of his ability to guard Obi Toppin, because of his ability to guard Pascal Siakam. That defensive versatility, I think, is something that's going to be valuable for the Cavs as they find opportunities throughout the course of this series to go away from the too big look.
Dean Wade was definitely my biggest choice when it comes to somebody that's going to see rotational minutes increased, especially after seeing his productivity grow in the latter half of the first round against the Miami Heat, where they had to go to a bigger lineup with Darius Garland off the floor. Dean Wade was a guy that allowed them to do different things defensively against a guy like Bam Adebayo, who can be super deadly in the pick and roll and can be a guy who can start facilitating and get guys in trouble that way. But they kind of neutralized Bam in that situation using DeAndre, Dean, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. The bigger lineup is something that we've continuously seen Kenny Atkinson use, especially in these kinds of lineups. But Chris, I'm on the other side of the spectrum from you on this one. I said this yesterday, and I don't know, because of the length of the players and the physicality of the players of Indiana, how well Sam Merrill's going to hold up. And again, this is, as I said yesterday, this is not me saying that Sam Merrill hasn't been great defensively this year. And this is not me saying that Sam Merrill is not tough enough or doesn't have the competitive spirit. If anybody on the team, Sam Merrill might be the most surprising when it comes to competitiveness on this team. So I'm not going to ever take that away from him. But what I'm saying is Isaac Okoro has the opportunity to change or help rewrite his playoff narrative in this series. And Jimmy kind of alluded to this yesterday. Like, if he's hitting his shots, if Isaac Okoro is hitting his shots, that could change the trajectory of this series immensely. Because, as you mentioned, Chris, and you're absolutely right, Tyrese Haliburton would have somewhere to hide. He would be able to play off of Isaac Okoro in the game, kind of like how Al Horford did in the Boston Celtics series last year, right, where they had a 5-man guarding Isaac Okoro. That simply cannot happen in this series. It cannot happen for the Cavs to be successful or for Isaac to see playing time. And I think everybody understands how important Isaac can be against guys like Andrew Nembhard, against guys like Tyrese Haliburton on the defensive end. But if he's not making shots, then that becomes a different conversation. To me, I think you have to give Isaac the opportunities to either succeed or fail. And that's kind of what I was going into yesterday, is Sam Merrill is a guy that fits into Kenny Atkinson's system. He's a guy that he's praised all season long. I want to see if Kenny Atkinson will give the opportunity for Isaac to write the story for himself rather than just going off of what past narratives were, even if those past narratives go just as far back as the opening round against the Miami Heat. Because Isaac had games where he was hitting shots and he had games where he was abysmal. So I think it's definitely up to him to figure out if he's going to play in this series or not. But I think you have to give him that opportunity.
I think the other thing, though, when it comes to Sam Merrill, just talking about this series in particular, look, nobody's going to mistake the Indiana Pacers defensively for the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? But since the All-Star break, Indiana is a top 10 defense in the NBA. That covers about 30 games. That's a pretty long stretch. And in one of the games where the Cavs played the Pacers and the Cavs had a majority of their guys, and the same thing with the Pacers, Kenny Atkinson said, "We were caught off guard by the physicality, the tenacity, and the on-ball pressure of the Pacers. Nembhard can do it. TJ McConnell can do it. Ben Shepherd can certainly do it. Aaron Nesmith can do it. Mathurin kind of has the skill set to do it, although he gets lost on defense at times. So Sam Merrill becomes like a pressure release valve. Because the minute that he goes out there on the court, like, the antennas are up for the opposing defense. And the kind of pressure that they're going to put on Donovan Mitchell becomes a little bit different. Or the kind of pressure that they're going to put on Darius Garland becomes a little bit different. because that could create an opportunity for Sam. So I think having his constant movement, having his gravity, it just loosens the defense in a different kind of way. Whereas with Isaac, it congests the floor. And because of the ball pressure that Indiana is known for, and because they are known for committing teams or forcing teams into turnovers, like, I don't think you want a jumbled court. I don't think you want a congested court. I think you want as much spacing as you can possibly get. And Sam just provides that in a different kind of way. And I think because the Cavs felt that pressure from Indiana, and their deflection numbers are good since the All-Star break, and the number of turnovers that they're forcing, very good since the All-Star break, I think the Cavs are going into this series with a better understanding of Indiana being capable of that because of that recent regular season meeting.
Yeah, and we're just conversating, going back and forth, because I think when we're talking about Isaac, you mentioned the physicality. I think he deals with the physicality probably a little bit better than Sam Merrill does. And we're not trying to have the debate of whether Isaac or Sam. I think there's going to be opportunities for both of these guys to show themselves. And again, it's going to be matchup based. It's going to be lineup based. It's going to be based on how these guys are playing. But I think, Chris, you're absolutely right when it comes to the congestion, because even when Isaac has been effective in a half role situation this year, you have him on the floor with Evan Mobley or Jared Allen. Well, they're already in the dunker spot. So where are you rolling to that is not going to congest the floor? So I think that's a great point on your part. And I think the physicality aspect is where I would change that up with Isaac. That would be my only counter for that, right? But I do want to ask you this, because I got to give credit to Sam Merrill as a former point guard at Utah State. We know he can handle the ball a little bit, and he's got more leeway with handling the ball this season than he had in his previous years with J.B. Bickerstaff at the helm. And we know, as you mentioned, the physicality of the defense for the Indiana Pacers. So this next question from our subtexter, Evan in Lyndhurst, says the first two games against Indiana, they used a full court press to disrupt our offense. Do you think that will happen again? I think the answer is a resounding yes against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, whether we talked about it yesterday, if Aaron Nesmith is guarding Donovan or Andrew Nembhard is guarding Darius Garland. That's one of the ways that every team around the league has seen and will game plan accordingly if they have the personnel to do so, that it's a way to get the ball out of the hands of Donovan and Darius. And for the Cavs, that can either be a weapon or it can be a deterrent. What do you think, Chris?
I also think it's a way to force the Cavs into starting their offense out a little bit higher and starting their offense a little bit later in the shot clock. You know, a second, 2 seconds could be a big difference. And the Cavs like to get the ball across, and they like to initiate action really, really quickly, because that way, if the first thing that they want to do is taken away, then they can go to the second action, or they could go to the third action or the fourth action. And that's the difference between this year's Cavs offense and some in the past. It's not that they're going away from pick and roll. It's still a bread and butter set for them, but it's all of the actions that happen within that pick and roll set and all of the actions that have to happen after that if that gets taken away. And that takes time. So the more pressure that any team can put on the Cavs and try and disrupt their rhythm, take them out of their usual comfort zone, push them farther away from the basket. Yeah, I think that's a formula. And I think you hit on it, Ethan. You have to have the personnel to do that, right? Miami had one guy that could do that. One. And it was Davion Mitchell. And he was very tenacious, and he was very, very good in the series for Miami as a defensive player. He bothered guys. He bothered Donovan Mitchell at times. He bothered Darius Garland at times. He bothered Ty Jerome at times because he's that kind of disruptor. Indiana has like 4 of those guys. So that's a little bit different. So they're able, I think they have the personnel to kind of pressure the Cavs for the entirety of the game and not wear down or not just require one guy to exude that kind of energy. You know, if Tyler Hero was going to pressure full court, what was that going to do to disrupt the Cavs? Absolutely nothing. They're like, all right, cute. Let's just bring a screen up and then you're going to back off. But TJ McConnell is so pesky. And Ben Shepherd is really, really physical, and he's got size, and he's got athleticism, and he can be pesky. And we all know about Andrew Nembhard, too. So having multiple guys that can all handle that kind of role. Like for the Cavs, the majority of that ball pressure is coming from Max Strus. Max is like picking guys up 94 feet, and he's trying to be tough and physical and push them off their spots and stuff like that. But Indiana has multiple guys that can do that. So I do think they have the personnel. I'm not saying that Indiana is going to stop the Cavs offense. I'm not saying that Indiana is going to be the Cavs kryptonite. But they have the personnel to at least bother the Cavs and disrupt their rhythm a little bit and make it so it's not as free-flowing and easy. It was easy for the Cavs on the offensive end against Miami. Indy has the personnel that can make it seem more of a chore offensively.
Chris, I think if Tyler Hero got caught in the backcourt, Darius Garland would have hit him with an in and out size up, and then like the road runner, beep beep, bye.
Yeah.
There's no shot that he would have been able to do that. But on the other hand, when I was looking at or watching the Indiana Pacers series as it was coming to a close against the Milwaukee Bucks, it was apparent to me that Ben Shepherd was getting more minutes at the end of that series and not necessarily in garbage time either. Obviously, with Damian Lillard being off the floor, now you add another player to disrupt Gary Trent Jr. and all these players that are very important to what the Milwaukee Bucks are able to do, but also knowing that Giannis is the nucleus of all of that. Now you put somebody else on the floor that can disrupt and take some alleviation from Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith to get them also ready for this next series. I think Ben Shepherd getting more minutes in the latter half of that series was a Rick Carlisle play to be like, hey, I know I wasn't giving you a whole lot of minutes to start this series, and maybe not even to to end games, other than when we were blowing the Bucks out. But I feel like you are going to be a key piece in this game, and I think everybody might have been like, "Oh, Ben Shepherd, he didn't play in this first series. He's not going to play against the Cavs." No, again, matchup based, lineup based, personnel based, and that's how Rick Carlisle, who is, I think Jimmy said this, probably or arguably one of the most experienced coaches since Eric Spoelstra got knocked out of the first round, still left in the Eastern Conference when it comes to coaches in the playoffs, and I think he has a great enough grasp on what needs to be done for his team to be successful. And I think that's another play from Rick Carlisle to have his team ready to go against Cleveland come Sunday, even with a player that wasn't getting a whole lot of love to begin that series. But
I mean, shoot, look at a previous matchup between the two teams. Now, I know this was before DeAndre arrived, so it was before the trade deadline. It was in January. But Ben Shepherd started one of those games because Indiana did not have Tyrese Halliburton for it. So he has started games and he's performed well enough throughout the course of the regular season that's somebody that Rick Carlisle would have no problem going to, right? And in that game against the Cavs, he was not good offensively. He was not making shots, but he was one of their most effective players because of the ball pressure that he was providing. Because of the tenacity and the physicality on defense. Now the Cavs won that game, but that just shows you if that guy played that kind of role against the best team in the Eastern Conference on a night that Indiana did not have Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle's not going to hesitate going to him if he feels like Indiana needs what he brings to the table.
And just for clarification, for people wondering what I'm talking about when saying that Ben Shepherd started getting some minutes and then looking at his game log and be like, well, he only played 6 minutes in the closeout game and that was in the overtime. Okay, sure. He didn't play in the first two games, right? He didn't get minutes in the opening round series until the game 3, where he played 15 minutes. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying a team getting more opportunity, a player getting more opportunity. It goes from none to a little. not
yeah, that's the thing. Even it doesn't mean it has to be 30. Everybody. That's why they're called role players. It's the same thing that the Cavs, that the Cavs have going for them. The core four, they're going to get the majority of the minutes. Everybody understands that. And then role players, like by nature, your workload is going to fluctuate. Your shot attempts are going to fluctuate. Your production is going to fluctuate. And it's like all you have to do to make an impact in a series is take the one stint that you're given and do something positive. Change the game somehow, some way. And that goes back to Isaac Okoro, right? Like there might be a situation, a 5-minute stretch where the Cavs are just like, hound Tyrese Halliburton. Make him uncomfortable. Force Indiana to run their offense a different kind of way. That's all you have to do. That's what we need you for. Just shut Indiana's water off for a small stretch. And if Isaac does that, then he becomes a success. If it leads to like one stretch in one game that the Cavs go on to win, like that's what he's here for. That is his role. Now, yeah, he has a role offensively too, and they're probably going to put him as a screener at various points rather than just camping him in the corner, because if you just camp him in the corner, then the defender can shade off of him, and then he's not moving, and he's not feeling like he's involved in the play. So the Cavs have like a role for him within the offense too, but it's very, very small. And that's what it takes as a role player. I bring up this comparison a lot. But Dante Jones was the last player signed for the Cavs on the last day of the regular season, and everyone's like, oh my God, like what is this for? Is he just a locker room lieutenant? Is he just, a veteran presence? Is he just an extension of the coaching staff? And then he gets 1 minute and he changes the game during that 1 minute with his defensive tenacity and forcing turnovers. And it's like, if that's what's needed from you in that moment, and you can do that for the team, then you have accepted your role and you have done what you were asked to do, and that's really all that matters.
And we've talked a lot about this, and on the other side of the coin, how the transition offense of the Pacers is really good. Well, if Isaac Okoro can turn defense into offense,
sure,
maybe he doesn't have to take as many 3-point shots because he's doing what he's built to do. Take the ball to the hoop and driving it and slashing and cutting, something we hadn't seen in previous years. But like if you go back and watch the tape from him at McEachern, at Auburn, like that's who he was. He wasn't a 3-point specialist. He wasn't a 3-and-D guy. Sure, he could get down and dirty on defense, but he wasn't taking these kind of threes. But so that's what the progression for him has been, and we want to continue to see that. But Chris, as you mentioned, role players, and obviously you mentioned him earlier, DeAndre Hunter. But our last subtext question for today's episode is something transformed DeAndre Hunter from a game one dud into a rest of the series stud. What happened, Chris? And I'm curious what you saw that was different, because in that first game, DeAndre had opportunities. He just looked bad. But in the latter half of the series, he looked like a guy that was comfortable in his own skin, in his own principles, and just helping the Cavs in multiple different ways. And I think he, as I said yesterday, is the most important player for the Cavs' success in this series against Indiana in the Eastern Conference Semifinals.
Well, following his game one dud, he sat down with the coaching staff and they talked through a bunch of different things. And he watched film with members of the coaching staff trying to figure out, okay, where do I fit in the offense? And then the coaching staff had a conversation with DeAndre and said, where do you want the ball? Like, what benefits you? And if we feel like it can benefit us as a team, we'll incorporate that. So they put in plays specifically for DeAndre Hunter. They put in sets that they thought would benefit him. And I think that is what you saw. And I think that's why you saw him get more comfortable, because the way that he was used was different. The way that the Cavs got him involved on the offensive end and kind of like force-fed him touches, that catered to his game. He also had teammates, Ty Jerome, Donovan Mitchell, say, hey, man, like, we need you. I know that you're playing defense. I know that you didn't have the kind of role that you probably expected in game one, but we are going to need you, and we need your offensive scoring punch. Be aggressive. Look for yours. Even if it means, Donovan's not going to control one of the offensive possessions, or even if it means Ty Jerome kind of has to take a back seat. Like, we want you to be involved on the offensive end. So I think he gained confidence from his teammates, encouraging him. I think he gained confidence because he had that sit down with the coaching staff and that film breakdown with the coaching staff so that he could figure some things out, and his shot profile changed, and where he was getting his touches, that changed as well. And I think the obvious one, Ethan, in the final 2 games of the series, Darius Garland wasn't out there. So, that is a high usage player who dominates possessions by design because he's a really, really dynamic offensive player. But if you take that guy out of the mix, then all of a sudden there's more room for somebody like DeAndre. The Cavs need his scoring a little bit more. He was able to attack Tyler Hero in switches. He was able to attack Duncan Robinson in switches because there was more freedom to his game within the offense because the high usage ball dominant guard, the second one in Darius, was taken out of the equation. And I think the Cavs sometimes get into the situation of, Darius and Donovan are so elite in pick and roll situations, and we've got elite pick and roll bigs, and it makes sense for us to put the ball in the hands of Darius, and it makes sense for us to put the ball in the hands of Donovan, and that's going to be a successful pathway for us on the offensive end of the floor. Well, when you take one of those guys out of the mix, you have to function a different kind of way offensively. You have to look for different ways that you can attack the defense of the Miami Heat. And DeAndre was one of those ways. They got him the ball at the elbow extended. They got him the ball in the post. They even let him run some stuff off the dribble from the three-point line using some screening action where he would beat Andrew Wiggins off the dribble at times, or he would beat Duncan Robinson off the dribble at times. So his touches went up significantly from games 1 and 2 to games 3 and 4, and I think that was a byproduct of not having Darius Garland out there.
So, Chris, I'm going to end this podcast with a question from me based on what we did or didn't see at today's practice and what I think is one of the biggest underlying storylines for this series. And today at practice, we didn't see Darius Garland afterwards getting in his usual post-practice work, although the Cavs did post on social media, and he was in a video getting shots up. Whether or not that means that he practiced or not, the world will never know because we did not get to talk and confirm that with Kenny Atkinson. Obviously, you can assume things, but I'm not going to do that. That's not what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of reporting. And for me to you, my question is, and what I'm thinking is, with this toe injury and how Darius Garland operates, how he dribbles, all the moves that you were talking about, how he gets into the offense, and how crucial he is, I think the other portion of this is how important would it be for Kenny Atkinson to go away from Darius Garland if he's not having success and going to an option that lets the offense continue and allows the Cavs to have a defense that doesn't have as much of an attack-heavy personnel on the floor. I just think if Kenny Atkinson is going to be able to continue to pushing the right buttons, this might be the hardest button he's had to push all year, but I think it's the biggest one and the most important one. What do you think?
This is the Eastern Conference Semifinals. You are not concerned about feelings. You're not concerned about politics. You're not concerned about hierarchy. You're not concerned about franchise status. You're concerned about winning the series, the best pathway that you feel like you have to winning the series against Indiana and getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's all that matters. And I think the way that this team is constructed and the way that Kenny Atkinson has operated and the sacrifices that every player has made and the selflessness that has been shown up and down the roster, I don't think you lose Darius for the remainder of this playoff run if from time to time you go away from him because you think you need a better defensive team out there. or because you don't think he's as effective as you would want him to be playing through that toe injury. So Kenny's going to do what he thinks is best for this team. And he's not going to consider feelings. He's going to have conversations. He's going to communicate all these things. He's going to be transparent. He's going to explain his reasoning behind stuff because that's your job as a coach. He's going to try and manage these personalities as much as he did during the regular season. But this is the Eastern Conference Semifinals, and all that other stuff goes out the window. And I do think it's something worth monitoring when it comes to Darius. I'm not sounding alarm bells. I'm not saying that I'm guaranteeing that he can't be effective playing through this injury, but I think it's something that we have to pay attention to, and it's something that the Cavs are going to pay attention to. And there's another thing here involved. As long as Darius is out there, Indiana's going to attack him. Just like Miami did, just like Boston is planning to do in the conference finals if both teams get there, just like Oklahoma City would do in the NBA finals, or if it's Minnesota, just like Ant would do in the NBA finals. You know, some teams are more disciplined and some teams are better at like relentlessly hunting that mismatch and playing a guy off the floor than others. But like, that's the strategy and everybody knows it. And Darius knows it and Kenny Atkinson knows it. And when you're talking about this guy who is already a weak defender, who has already got some physical limitations, and now you're talking about dealing with a toe injury that could affect your change of direction, that could affect your lateral quickness, that could affect your stop-start, that could affect your ability to fight through screens, that could affect just your speed overall, playing against the fastest team in the entire NBA. That's something to monitor too. Because Darius at 100%, he's not a very good defender. All of the numbers say that. And I'm not just picking on him. I'm just saying what has happened throughout the course of this year. So at 100%, he's a targeted defender. Now, if you're talking about, and Indiana knows he's dealing with a toe injury, they have the internet. They watch these videos. They get the injury report every single day during this series. So now if you're talking about him being at 90%, if you're talking about him being at 95%, then it's something that Kenny would really have to consider.
And you're kidding yourself if you don't think that Andrew Nembhard and Tyrese Halliburton are going at that toe. Like, what? I know nobody is really a big Dylan Brooks fan, but he kept it real. A reporter asked him if you are attacking Steph Curry's thumb because that thing looks gigantic after even getting iced down and all these things. Like, and he was like, well, if I had an injured ankle, I know guys are gonna come and attack me and go after that.
Right.
So whether or not you think that's how I should or shouldn't be playing, I'm gonna do everything I can to win. And this is the same situation. The Pacers have the personnel, again, that buzzword, personnel, the pace, the space, the speed to attack what Darius Garland is dealing with. And that's another thing that you have to monitor, because this is a guy who is super confident, uber confident in himself. But the maturity aspect of it is if he gets attacked, if he's not playing to his standard, that is where Darius Garland kind of finds himself in a slippery slope. And whether or not he'll be able to hold up the smile, the joy. Remember when I said earlier this season when he wasn't playing well and the most important thing was that he was still smiling, and everybody was like, well, why does that matter? This is why. It's a maturity thing. And that's what Kenny Atkinson's buzzword has been for Darius Garland for the entire playoffs. And for me, and what he said, that's the reason that they're going to get further in this playoff run, is if Darius Garland can mature. And he keeps comparing him to Steph, right? It's not how Steph plays, but it's how he's reactive, how his body has adjusted, and how he's been focused on both ends of the floor and holding up, even though he knows guys are going to come at him with all they got.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell are going to do like the Charleston or the Lindy Hop on Darius's injured toe. It just means they're going to pull him out in switches and attack him off the dribble and test that toe over and over and over again. Just like if somebody's dealing with an achy ankle, or Donovan Mitchell was dragging his knee through the course of the playoffs last year, they're going to put him in the switch. They're going to put him in isolations, and they're going to try and attack him off the dribble to see if he can stay in front of them. It's going to be the same thing with Darius. Put him in an isolation situation, pull back your dribble and attack, and see if you can blow by, and see if you can put added pressure on that toe, and see if he can hold up from a speed, quickness, agility, lateral agility, like all those different things. That's the way that you really test a guy's effectiveness, and that's the way that you make it really, really hard on that particular player.
All right. Well, that will do it for this episode of Hey Chris with the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. If you want to hear your name called, shouted out on the podcast, hear your questions answered, this is where you go to send them in and to have your voice heard. To do so, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who signed up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.